Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Appropriate Audiences. I'm your host, Haley Duran, and joining me this week we have Danielle Lakovic and Jason Zoblin. We'll be talking about the Grand Budapest Hotel this week, Wes Anderson's new film, and oh my gosh, it's fantastic. It focuses on Ralph Fiennes, who plays a concierge, and he gets accused of murder for one of the hotel's most popular guests. And it follows his story of trying to prove his innocence and just all the wacky things that happen with him. So, guys, let's just get started. What Wes Anderson movies have you seen?
I have not seen any Wes Anderson movies, and the Grand Budapest Hotel was the first one I ever saw, so I was really looking forward to it because everyone told me, oh, they're so quirky, they have all kinds of cute things in them, they're really colorful, and I was just really excited to watch it.
I am the complete opposite. I've seen almost all of them. Not all of them, but almost all. I've seen Royal Tenenbaums, Rushmore, Moonrise Kingdom,
Steve Zissou? Life Aquatic?
Life Aquatic I've seen, and they're all just spectacular, and they're so funny. They're hilarious. And it's so great, mainly because the cast is so good, and they just pop up at random parts in the movie. And you're just like, oh my God, Bill Murray. Oh my God, Owen Wilson. It's great. It's so funny.
So what were your expectations going in?
Okay. I was excited, mainly because I'm a huge fan, and I wanted to see how he was going to make it different from his other films, because in a way they are similar, but they're also different at the same time. So I was excited to see how he's going to make it different and raw, and how he usually does it. So.
Well, it was definitely different.
It was.
Language-wise, violence-wise, but I mean, before we get into all those details, what did you end up thinking about it?
I ended up thinking that it was such a good, cute movie. It's cerebral, but it's also one of those movies that if you have 2 hours that you want to kill, or you just really want to enjoy something, you can watch it, because you'll go from being surprised, and you're laughing, and then you're horrified, and then you're laughing again, all in the span of like 30 seconds. That was what my favorite thing about the movie was, and I think I would like any of his other movies, because you just go from one extreme to the other nonstop, and it's just this cute roller coaster ride the whole movie.
It's all all of them are just like it. I love.
They're all their own little adventures.
Exactly. And especially because you can see similarities in different characters throughout the films. And it's so great to see when a new character comes in, because it's so exciting to see how it plays out and how it goes along with the storyline. That was great. I loved it.
I thought it was really interesting, the switch from Moonrise Kingdom, that plot line, to the Grand Budapest Hotel, because Moonrise Kingdom was about these 2 kids and their coming of age story, where this was a hotel concierge who got in trouble because he fooled around with the guests, and so because it was a very just more adult storyline. Not that Moonrise Kingdom wasn't adult, because obviously the kids were very mature.
Yeah.
But this was just, the storyline was much more I would not bring kids to see this movie. Whereas Moonrise Kingdom, I might. What are your thoughts?
Well,
I thought that's one of the things that I liked about it, is you see the commercial for it on TV, and it's the Grand Budapest Hotel, and you see this image of this really bright hotel, and all the colors. It's so colorful. It doesn't look like something that you would all of a sudden have violence, or all the cursing, or you would have this really intricate plot. It just looks like this cute adventure, and then you go see the movie, and it's cute, but there's a lot more underneath the cuteness, and it really is a good story just beneath all of the colors. That's what I liked. That's what I really liked about it, is you're like, oh, it grabs your attention real fast, and then it holds it the whole time with just, this thing happens, and it's just nonstop. You just keep going until you get to the end, and you're like, and you can finally breathe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know you didn't see Moonrise Kingdom, but it was very similar in the way also, because in Moonrise Kingdom, felt the same way, mainly because these were just kids that were messed up, part of a messed up family, and they were trying to look for that one their happiness together, and same with this one. They're trying. he's trying to make sure he's okay with the murder and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that definitely there were similarities between the two movies, but at the same time, it was just a very, very different plot, I think. It was also interesting, the cast of characters, I think. He had everyone that he normally works with, but to a lesser extent than he normally does, and I thought that was interesting, especially that this was the first time he worked with, I pronounce it Ray Fiennes. Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. But I thought that was really interesting because to me, he's been in like comedy movies, like he did Made in Manhattan, but for me, he will always be the Nazi in Schindler's List. I will always be like, so like it was weird watching it for me because I'm like, you're a really bad guy, but you're playing this really funny role. So I thought the cast was really interesting. I was wondering what you thought about kind of like, it wasn't a shakeup, but at the same time, it kind of was.
The main lobby boy, I don't know his name, but he was incredible. That was his first film, right? That was his first film. So good for his first film, and it's a big deal because Wes Anderson is a very popular and director that a lot of actors love to work with him. So it's a big deal. And also Bill Murray is always great. He's so funny, and he's usually just like pops up randomly in most of his films. So.
Except for Moonrise Kingdom and the Royal Tenenbaums. Well, no, see, I disagree because usually he has a really big role.
Yeah,
normally,
and in this one he didn't. Yeah.
No, like he just popped up for like 10 minutes because I was sitting there, I was like, "Where's Bill Murray?"
I'm waiting. You're
waiting
for
like,
him. Yeah.
Where is Bill Murray? And then finally, no, I was sitting there, I was like, where is he? Where is he?
I need him.
No, because it's not a Wes Anderson movie without Bill Murray. It's just, you can't have one without Bill Murray. So when he finally popped up, I was like, okay.
This movie's 10 times better.
Exactly.
So it's good now, but now it's just 10 times better.
10 times better for that full minute that you get to see Bill Murray. That's all. That's all you need.
His character's so good. Because, that entire scene was really funny. So, just for, those of you at home, basically, Ray Fiennes' character, Gustav, and the lobby boy have escaped he helps him escape from prison. And he's like, okay, I need help. It's time to call the Cross Keys. And then you get this montage of...
6 different hotel concierge, and they just say, okay, and then they dial the phone. Okay, and they dial the phone. And they keep calling each other, and Bill Murray is one of them.
Yep.
I think he's the first one.
He's the first one. And then you're just like, what is happening? He's like, okay.
Very serious, and then they put down the phone, and it continues. They call 6 different hotels.
And it's so great. It's just, it was a really good cameo. And, I feel it's almost he was like, I can't do a big role, but just write me a funny role. Because then, he's in the car, and he's just like, I could help you. I was like, oh. I really enjoyed it. Bill Murray. It also, again, Jason Schwartzman, who he always features heavily, really small role. Really small role. He probably only had, 5 minutes of screen time. Maybe? He was the concierge at the beginning of the movie.
Okay.
To refresh your memory.
Yeah.
He was, barely there. Oh, also, Jude Law was in it. That was another shakeup.
He hasn't been in any of his movies.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Ralph Fiennes and... I'm just going to keep changing the pronunciation of his name. And Jude Law never worked with before, and they appeared, and I loved it because I love Jude Law. And he was, a really good character. And,
It's great to see, mainly because I'm sure actors know that, working with Wes Anderson is an awesome feat. Kind of like working with the Coen brothers, they're such great directors, and maybe these actors are thinking, maybe I should work with him, because all these great actors are in these amazing films by him, so maybe I should join, Because what they're thinking.
No, I definitely agree, because Jeff Goldblum actually just did an AMA for Reddit, and someone asked him, what was your favorite movie to work on, and he's like, well, hands down, Grand Budapest Hotel, and another one. He's like, it was the most fun I've ever had. Working with Wes Anderson is always a really good time. So I definitely agree. I was really glad to see Jeff Goldblum, him and his cat.
His cat.
That's the only film he's worked on with Wes Anderson.
No, he was in Life Aquatic.
Oh, that's what I thought. Yeah, he was in Life Aquatic.
He plays the arch enemy.
Yeah.
Bill Murray's arch enemy.
Yeah. That was coming back to me. Yeah.
No, but I really liked Jude Law's character because I liked the way his character was there to facilitate like the storytelling.
Mm.
Like Wes Anderson, I know he didn't do it in Moonrise Kingdom, but normally he has a very specific narrative and he has a very specific way that he unfolds his story. Like you see it. This was similar to Royal Tenenbaums. So I liked the way that there was the story that I liked. It was a story within a story within a story because like the opening shot is this girl going to the graveyard and going to a cemetery and going to a grave, and it's like beloved author, and then she's like reading the book. This is the Grand Budapest Hotel, and then you get a flashback to the author telling the story, and then you get another flashback of him sitting listening to the story, and then another flashback of the story. So I liked the multiple layers of that, but I really appreciated the scenes where you see him listening to the story because I thought it was really interesting what they did with lighting and shot composition. And I mean, I want to talk about this later, but we can talk about it now. It's fine. And just basically, I wanted to talk about how everything is so meticulously planned out and shot and placed. And I don't know, I thought it was really interesting.
I think one of my favorite parts about the whole movie was how symmetrical everything was.
Mhm.
Like, and you get these really wide shots of like this, like the whole hotel, and then you have a little bit of action going on up here, and then combined with the chapters, it almost felt like Monty Python, where you get like the chapters, and it's like this is this chapter, and then action plays out, and then you get a picture, and it's like this is this chapter, and it plays out. Like it reads like a storybook, Monty Python, and like a fairy tale, like all at once. That's one of my favorite things, was that it was so many different little kinds of media all shoved into one. And then the thing you said about Jude Law is they start out with the girl, and then she's reading the book about the author, and then you get deeper into the story, and then it reverses, where you see the story, and then it comes back out to Jude Law's character talking to Zero, and then it stops and it goes to the girl reading the book, and then you just see the girl, and that's how the movie ends. Like it goes in the same way it goes out, like it's this one big circle. I thought that was really, really interesting. You literally see the story, the movie itself, come full circle.
That's with most of his films. You know, he wants to have like a nice story throughout, and by seeing all these amazing shots. And also different characters coming in, you know, everything gets solved by the end with everything coming together. So that's a main consensus of most of his films. So
it was definitely much more you're watching a movie. The feel was much because it was like the lighting when old lobby boy, I can't remember his name, and it was just, I feel really bad about I don't want to say Mufasa, that's not his name. But it was
the lobby
like
boy, like him when he was older, like explaining to the author.
Right.
Zero.
I was trying to think of his last name. I don't know why.
Zero Mustafa.
Thank you. Okay. Mufasa, Mustafa. Close.
there you go.
The lighting would dramatically change when he like shifted into a story. So this one felt much more like you are watching a movie, where the other ones are like still heavily stylized, but it's like, well, you don't feel as much as like you're, you know, like, oh, this.
You're not watching a story within a story within a story. You're not like watching someone explain, and it's almost like you're watching a play on stage. Like you literally know, okay, here we're explaining the story to you. You are outside the story along with some of the characters. Whereas in other movies, I'm assuming you don't have that feel. Like you're literally like you're getting in the theater and you're like, okay, and here's the movie. It's not like you have an explanation and you have to introduce these characters and say, okay, now I'm going to tell you the story within the story.
Your eye is much more drawn to the fact that you are watching something. Like, everything was super dramatic the way it shifted, and I loved it. I thought it was really interesting because I do love the way he makes everything perfectly symmetrical and everything's always centered and just
the colors
and
are
the
also
like always
incredible.
Beautiful. Like what I liked about this one is that there were more colors because Moonrise Kingdom was mostly like yellows and greens, and like this one had every color.
And Royal Tenenbaums was mostly red.
Right.
With Ben Stiller's jumpsuit. Yeah.
No, yeah, I loved how, I mean, it was like reds and purples, and then obviously the hotel itself is all these pastel colors, and then the Mendel's is pink, and I loved how there were much more colors. So you still had the feel of, you know, like pop of colors, but there was a wider palette, and I really enjoyed that. I think it was much more appealing to watch. Not that Moonrise Kingdom wasn't unappealing, but after a while it was like...
All the colors really grab your attention. You're constantly going back, and you know what you're supposed to look at. Too, is there some things that are, you know, not as colorful, and then boom, you have, you know, the lobby boys and you have all the hotel staff, they're all in these bright purple uniforms, and it's so much easier to follow too, I think, is because you know exactly what you're supposed to be looking at.
And for Moonrise Kingdom, it was mostly filmed outside
Right.
in a forest. You know, for this one, it's called the Grand Budapest Hotel. So it's obviously going to be extravagant
True.
and nice, and there's going to be beautiful things to look at, especially in the hotel. So.
I think it is interesting how he basically is the king of mise-en-scène, how he's so meticulous.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? Like, I know we were talking about, like, a little briefly how everything's really stylized, so it makes, like, you're watching a movie, but how do you feel about everything being so meticulously planned out?
I really liked it. I mean, it shows a lot of attention to detail, and obviously when there's that much attention to detail, that really makes it clear that there is importance to all these details and to all these colors. Like, I really feel like they did not skimp on anything. Like, you really feel like this is a complete whole world entirely on its own. And then going back to the thing with the colors, it really reminded me as I was watching it of Brian Fuller's Pushing Daisies.
Mm-hmm.
These really bright colors, these really pop out things. It almost feels not quite real. It has this air of like it's so colorful and it has these elements that it's a little bit above reality. It's just like, I don't really know how to explain it, but you don't feel like you're watching the movie, like something that could take place within your time. It's really something that's like you are watching like a story that has obviously been made up and that is not something that you could just go out and see. And I think that's part of the fun of it, is it's just this magical like world full of all these colors and things like that. It just really makes it its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
I always think of Wes Anderson as more of like a fantasy and like a fun way of watching a movie, mainly because like you see like these people in like these awesome camera angles. Like I remember in Life Aquatic when the narrator, well, we would see him like near the water and like have the camera move back. You know, do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that specifically. You know, so all of that together and with the colors, like it works so well watching. You know, he takes every single scene so precise. So that I love watching it mainly because of that.
Do you like the fact that it kind of has a fantasy element to it? Because he obviously uses models a lot. Like I know the hotel, when you have that wide shot, it is a model of it. And there were other moments when you could tell that obviously they built something, like it wasn't, it was like scaled down, but they didn't like try to hide it. So what did you think about that?
I think that adds to the whole feeling of you're watching sort of a play in the movie instead of you're actually watching something that like is real, so to speak. It's not like you watch another movie or something and it's like, you know, you are completely engrossed in the story and it could take place like, you know, if it takes place in New York, it could realistically take place in New York, you know, right now. The Grand Budapest Hotel it's so artificial in some ways, but realistic in others. It's not really anything that you can attain. Like, it's supposed to be this fantasy-esque world. Like, obviously, Dubrovka's not a real country, but you can see what I liked is the German influences, because it was filmed entirely in different parts of Germany, and there might have been a couple other countries too. But it was filmed entirely in, you know, this German areas, and so you see that, like, a lot of the words on the train stations or in any of the areas they go to, or even the made-up sort of areas that they go to, obviously have real-world influence. So you have a little bit of the real world and you have a little bit of fantasy, and they sort of come together. And I think you're really not supposed to know which is which, or you're not really supposed to make a distinction. It sort of all just kind of blends together. And I think that's what I really like about it, is it's this fantasy story with a little bit of realism, and in the end, you don't even care because it's a good time, so.
Yeah, what she said. Basically, just, it is a fantasy world, but it can also represent something that is also real. That's what I like about it mostly, because, like, there's so many different the characters that you can relate to at least one of them. So that's what I like about it.
Well, or you can relate to a little bit of everyone, too.
Exactly, yeah.
It certainly is very whimsical, and I think it does go along with the fact that at the very core, the story is from a book. So if you're reading
I feel like you get that, too.
Right.
I didn't know that before I saw the movie, and then in the credits it says based on the works of, and it was actually like based off of a book and writings and everything, and you can kind of see it. like you see that this was based off of not something that was entirely real.
Right.
So when you're watching the movie, it's not supposed to be entirely real. I think it's mainly what I thought is it's just a good way to, you go in the theater and you watch a movie and you're not in this world anymore. There's like all the suspension of disbelief and you're just supposed to get kind of caught up in his like really colorful fantasy world, and that was my favorite part about it because I did.
Right.
Like while you're sitting there for 2 hours watching it, you're so invested in the characters and you kind of forget that this isn't a real place, this isn't a real story, but you don't care because it's just that good.
Exactly.
And it's great mainly because like these are famous actors. Like you've seen these actors in other roles, you know, and it's great to see that you can relate it so well to all these great name actors. So I don't know. That's what I think.
Well, when we come back, we are going to talk about the violence and the language featured in this movie, but we're going to quickly look at Notorious Netflix with myself and Matt McGroarty, where this week we watched the Chernobyl Diaries. Oh, and what an adventure that was. Let's check it out. Hello, and welcome to Notorious Netflix, a program dedicated to showcasing some of the worst movie masterpieces Netflix has to offer. I'm Haley.
And I'm not Matt.
Have you ever been backpacking across Europe?
Have you ever been backpacking across Europe and thought to yourself, hey, I have a good idea. Let's stop at this abandoned town that looks and seems terrifying.
No, you haven't, because you are a person with sense and reason and know better to go to a ghost town wiped out by a nuclear plant.
Chernobyl Diaries follows 6 tourists who hire an extreme tour guide who takes them to the abandoned city Pripyat, which happens to be the former home to the workers of the Chernobyl nuclear reactor. During their exploration, they soon discover they are not alone.
I have to stress something about this movie. It has a 19% on Rotten Tomatoes. This is literally one of the worst movies we have ever watched on this segment. It was the first time that I could not get through it.
Vampire's Kiss is funny in how crazy Nick Cage's acting is.
The Room is so brilliant in how serious Tommy Wiseau takes himself.
Rubber had a really good cinematography.
But this movie is just awful. I can't even begin to describe how bad it is.
It doesn't have any of the charms of a good bad movie, or of the ones we watched, because Chernobyl Diaries takes itself seriously.
Nothing about it was scary. I found myself sitting, watching, asking, am I supposed to be scared? Or like, is something scary gonna happen?
Honestly, this movie made us cringe with how bad it was. Don't even get me started on the acting.
I would rather be forced to watch Spy Kids 4 for the rest of my life than to watch this movie again. I literally never want to even hear its name again. I have been thoroughly traumatized.
It's truly unfortunate that this movie is so bad for not only the viewer, but for Jesse McCartney as well. Jesse McCartney is in this movie. Can we stop and take a moment for that? This blows, because the topic is super interesting.
Chernobyl is a real place with a really cool backstory that lends itself perfectly to the scary movie genre. The writers, unfortunately, just missed the mark on what scary is.
This movie begs the question, can a good scary movie ever be made again?
I don't think so. And that's why I give Chernobyl Diaries 5 Can I Stop Watching Now out of 5.
And I give it 5 Jesse McCartney's leg getting owned out of 5.
That's all for this week's Notorious Netflix. Check us out next time for more horrible movie masterpieces. Okay, welcome back, guys. So, violence and language, much more heavily featured in this than most of his movies. Like, there's always been some language and there's always some violence, but it's usually not directly seen. Like in the Royal Tenenbaums, when the dog gets run over, you never actually see anything. It's just implied. So I thought it was really interesting that it was much more edgy, much more kind of, I want to say like in your face. It's not compared to like 300, which I did see. I saw 300 Rise of Empire. It's definitely not as violent as that. But for Wes Anderson, you're like, oh, okay, you're doing something new here. Okay. So what did you guys think?
Well, having never seen a Wes Anderson movie before, I thought that was sort of par for the course.
Okay.
And I thought it really kind of made the movie unique because you go from, you know, something really silly happened, there's a chase sequence, or when the lawyer, whose name I don't remember.
Jeff Goldblum and something Kovacs.
Kovacs, yeah, the lawyer, he's trying to go through the museum and he's trying to escape
That
from the
was
assassin.
funny.
And then all of a sudden, there's this, like, he's trying to escape and he's looking out and finally going to escape. He sees the motorcycle and then the guy gets him from behind and, you know, he loses 4 of his fingers. It's very sudden.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all of a sudden, boom, he's dead. And you're like, whoa, okay, that just
Exactly.
happened. And then, like, the whole idea that I really liked was this juxtaposing this chase scene, really funny, boom, something really violent happens. And you're just sort of, whoa, and you kind of have to back off. And it just, that's one of the things I really liked about it, is it, you know, catches you here, you get caught here, violence, funny, chase sequence, you know, something funny again, more violence. You're constantly going. You never really get a break. I noticed that watching it, is you never really get a break. You constantly have to pay attention, and there's always something here, catch your eye, and it's constant. And then when the movie ends, it sort of all accumulates and it ends at once. You're going, and then suddenly you stop. So the whole movie itself is kind of like a little roller coaster you're watching. It's just so many things that you have to pay attention to, and then when it's over, and you're like, you can breathe a sigh of relief. But you had fun on the roller coaster while you were riding it. So.
With his films, if there was violence or language, it was humorous. You know, it was
Right.
It was for
a reason.
For a reason. But here, it like a hand gets chopped off.
Absolutely.
You know, like that was like that took me back a little
Exactly,
bit.
and then-
because
That took me back to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Yeah.
A little bit.
I never saw that.
More
Yeah.
fingers.
Yeah.
Not as funny though.
It just, I think the way he stages things and sets up shots is why it's so humorous. Like,
Mhm.
going through the museum, the reason it's really funny is because you're getting these deep focus shot compositions where you're just seeing, like, this really long hall and then this guy, like,
There's
running
one little
down
guy
it.
walking down the
He-
hall.
His shots like make it so awkwardly funny.
Mhm,
And that's what
exactly.
makes it so hilarious to watch.
Like, when
I
they're
think.
going through the giant mansion, and you get this like wide shot, and you just see the lobby boy and Gustav just like scurrying along. Like, it's so awkward. Like, you're just like,
You would
this is-
feel you feel bad if you don't laugh. You're like,
exactly.
if I don't laugh at this, I feel like I'm not doing. You feel like
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be laughing at this. Like, you would not set up this huge shot of the hotel and then all you have is like the teeny little cart going
Yep.
up. I feel like you're supposed to laugh at that. You're supposed to just laugh at like how you see these teeny little inner workings of the hotel, or when they're like in the mountains
Mhm.
and they're on like the ski lifts and all you see is just the 2 little ski lifts coming at each other. It's just like, it's these little like miniature films,
Yep.
like these little miniatures inside the movie. Like,
It's-
you're supposed to laugh at them.
It's just the weirdness and
Yep.
the quirkiness that comes together that make it so hilarious. to
Like, I
watch.
feel like you're
think.
watching a little storybook unfold.
Exactly.
You get chapter titles, and like when the movie opens, you have a little girl and she's reading the book.
Yep.
And she's reading about the author, I feel like you're literally watching what she's thinking
Exactly.
in her head, sort of. Like, you're watching her in her mind reading the book, how
Exactly.
she imagines it. So you can think of like, how was the book written? Like, is he describing like the whole scene of the hotel and then describing like the 2 little characters running across this big hallway, or just emphasizing like the littleness of the people versus the wilderness when they're escaped after Gustav and Zero like escape from the jail.
Mhm.
And that's part of the reason that I think the movies are so whimsically funny, is you're literally watching
Mhm.
these little stories take place and they all add up to one movie. But I literally felt like we were watching the girl
Yeah.
as she's coming up, as she's reading the book. And I think that was interesting because it's yet another layer. It's like, how many layers in this movie can you stack? And I feel like he just accomplished you got so many layers. And then you bring them back down again by you open with the girl in the cemetery and then you end with the girl in the cemetery. I feel like you've literally
Yep.
gone in this roller coaster.
Come full
You
circle.
come full circle. You start out the ride, you get higher, you get to see more and more, and then you come back down. That was just one of my favorite things, is how he can put so many elements into one single movie. Like, I felt when we were watching it and you get these big wide angle shots and you get these, you see the whole hotel and then there's like this little thing going on at the end, or when they're escaping from the jail and they open the door and it's the 5 of their heads and then you see the
Yep.
five
That's great.
guards playing poker like on the table beneath them, and then you see like it's just funny. Like you feel bad if you don't laugh at
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Wes Anderson like took the fact that he usually gets no money for his films, like he has such a low budget, and then like just ran with it. And he's like,
Yep.
you know what? If I'm gonna have to use miniatures, might as well make it like look that I'm using miniatures. Why not? Like that could be funny. So I feel like that's
Right? I feel like some of the artificiality was there on purpose.
exactly.
To let you know, to remind you that you are watching like a story within a story, or to remind you of the artificiality of the movie. Like you are literally watching something that we have made. Like I feel like a lot of the artificiality, like the little models and
Mhm.
everything, like that was, I feel like it was completely on purpose. Like he totally had a reason for doing that, and it made it even more enjoyable because it just, you can also, as you're watching it, like appreciate the work
Mhm.
that went into it too.
I don't even think he needs like this like big
No.
budget. Like he doesn't need it because like it's just a realist film. Like
Exactly.
you don't need all these great like all these like
Swooping
locations.
camera
yeah,
angles.
Exactly.
and-
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
that's part
get
of,
it. You know, we
yeah.
understand. We
we
don't.
get that it's a movie. Now just, show us the movie.
And-
Like that's one of the things I liked is he had all his camera angles, and having never seen a Wes Anderson movie before, I can definitely see like he has a
Yes.
style.
Mhm.
Like these wide shots and some little things are going on at the bottom, and then all of the camera in a lot of movies, the camera kind of wobbles and it like moves with the
He's
people.
very smooth,
very smooth.
tracking.
It's right here, it's not moving, and then you just move to this one, and then you
Yep.
move here, and
Yep.
it's fast and sometimes it's slow, and it wasn't like trying to follow the characters. It's almost like literally as if you were watching again a play where you're
Mhm.
sitting here and you're not moving with the characters like with the camera.
Right.
Like you are literally sitting here and they are doing things on the stage on the screen. I think that's what really helped add this whole like artificiality that you can still enjoy, but it literally felt like we were watching a play within a movie or a movie within a movie.
Any thoughts to add or?
Well, everything she said like makes sense. But it his camera angles are incredible, and
They're just so simple.
they're so simple and like it. I mean, and the thing is, you can tell, especially with his movies, that you can explain a character through camera angles.
Mhm.
I think you can
Mhm.
explain their emotions, explain how they're feeling. I mean, I'm sure that's similar, but and he plays on that throughout the whole film, and it helps throughout the storyline. So he's incredible. He's so good. He's so good.
I know. I love him personally. He is my favorite director. I just what he does is so because I love quirky humor, and I think he does it so well. Personally, I think for me, my favorite scene was such a little detail, and I can't remember the scene. I just remember the detail. It was one of the it was like one of the original flashbacks where it was Jude Law was listening to the story, and Zero said something, and you could just see, and it wasn't in focus, but you could just see Jason Schwartzman like pop into the frame and like look, and then pop back.
Right.
It was such a small thing, but I was dying because it's perfect. And that's what I love about him, that he makes these really like deep focused shots. Like he makes really complex shots where like something's happening in the foreground, and if you're not paying, and something will happen in the background. There will be a little thing going on, and if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. But if you're looking, it's there, and it's always so funny.
It's one of those things, the movies you have to see like 3 times
Yep.
to catch everything. You have like, okay, I watched this last time. Now I have to pay attention to this different area or this other area. And I really like it because it's realistic. Like, obviously there's going to be stuff going on in the background, and maybe if you were there, you'd see this, or if you were another person, you'd see that. So I liked that there's so many like itty bitty little things going on. It's not just the main characters standing around like doing something. It's the hotel is moving in the background, or there's these things going on, or when they're like in the prison and they're escaping, and then they end up in like the monastery. Like all these characters doing things on their own that you catch sometimes if you're not looking at the main characters, but it's realistic in that there's so much going on just besides them. Like it's their story, but there's so much going on besides just them.
It sounds cliche, but like you feel like you're there with them.
Exactly.
Yeah, you
That's
do.
the best part.
Because maybe you notice something that isn't the main characters, because maybe you're one of the, if you were there, you might not have noticed them, or you might not look at them, or you might not find them all that interesting. Like, there's other stuff in the movie to notice.
What were your favorite moments? I gotta ask.
I think my favorite moment had to be when he was hanging off the ice
Yes.
and he kept kicking it and kicking it, and he's like, oh, like he's gonna die, like he's gonna fall.
Gustav,
and then
just to-
Gustav is hanging off the ice, and I forget the assassin's name.
I
It's
do
one of the
too.
brothers.
But it was Willem Dafoe was the actor.
Yeah, it's one of the brothers of the family. They're all after Gustav because the fortune
Yeah.
of the old lady went to him. And he's kicking the ice and it's cracking, it's
Spoilers.
cracking, and it's not, and it's you want to feel like kind of upset, like horrified, like
Right.
oh no, is he gonna die? Like obviously he's not. There's still more time in the movie.
Right.
But like what's gonna happen to him? Like it's the suspense anyway. And it's not even that it happens dramatically. It's you see the guy from below, like as if you were Gustav
Yep.
hanging on the ice, and he stomps, and then you just see a frame of ice. And every time he kicks, you go back to this frame of all it is ice, and it cracks more and more. And it's just this. It's almost supposed to be like funny danger. And then all of a sudden, Zero comes and he just pushes the guy off the cliff, like completely out of nowhere. Like it's all of a sudden it's this dramatic moment, and then all of a sudden there's something funny. That's one of the things I really liked is you get really a lot of drama, or you get this, and then it's kicked out of the way, literally sometimes, by something funny. You have serious moments, and there's always something funny to punctuate them. Like you're never too serious for too long.
Mhm.
I thought in this movie we never really had something too serious too long.
Right.
I think when one of my favorites was when like you see one of his one of his actors that are usually in films like Bill Murray.
Right.
Was Edward Norton was in this, right?
He was.
Yes.
Edward Norton was in it. Jason Schwartzman. Every time they came in, I was just I got so excited because I knew it was going to be great to see them because they add so much to the film because they're also incredible actors. But also when Rafi
Well,
Ennis
Gustav.
Gustav,
Gustav.
when his actor and Jude Law, they're great to add to it also. And then Bill Murray is just incredible. And regardless that he was only in it for such a short amount of time, he's such an amazing actor, and it's so great to see him now. He is like the classic actor to see now, and he's such like a crazy guy to look at now. So yeah, it's great.
Okay, guys. So I think we can all agree that go see this movie.
Mhm.
Just go see it.
Definitely.
You should be seeing it right now after you watch this. Just go watch it. I want to thank you guys again for being here. It was really a pleasure having you, and I'm glad you could join me. That's all we have for this week's episode of Appropriate Audiences. Don't forget to like us on Facebook. See you next week. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Appropriate Audiences. I didn't understand why I was not on my camera, so that's why I didn't start talking. Welcome to this week's episode of Inappropriate Audiences. I'm your host, Haley Duran. Well, this week's episode of Inappropriate Audiences will be talking about what Ryan just did. So, feelings, fellatio, go. Clearly he's for it, guys. He's all for it. Okay, Jason's freaked out by fellatio. Danielle, your feelings.
I'm a little uncomfortable, just maybe.
Okay, then I guess it's just Ryan and I who are for fellatio. Okay, well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Inappropriate Audiences. Join us next week for Ryan humping Jason's leg. See you next week.
Yes.
And Ryan making that noise.
Oh, that's Ryan's laugh.
Really?
That's the call of the Ryan.